All right. Welcome back everyone guys. Ayan na, nabulo na sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. Maraming salamat. It took me some time to set this up but I'm trying to use itong 4K camera para diretso natin para medyo mas maganda naman yung quality ng ano natin. So pasensya na, I still have to work on the lighting. So if you're actually watching us on YouTube, the lighting is a bit too strong. If you're watching us on Facebook, the lighting is slightly weaker, but we're working on the 4K camera. Nevertheless, marami tayong pag-usapan. Eto na, welcome to the new month, August month. Grabing July, ang dami nangyari. A lot of things that we expect to happen actually happen, good, bad, and ugly. And as we head into the new month, marami din tayong pag-usapan. And of course, for some of you who were kind enough to drop off dun sa mga conversations natin, whether this is the conversation we had with Secretary Ronald Llamas, conversations, of course, earlier with Justice Ascuna, Justice Carpio, and then more recently, just the other year with other day, sorry, with Attorney Dino De Leon, and not to mention, of course, yung mga kasama natin. Ito na, Pinas Foundation, guys. Yun ang sabi ko. Katulad ng pangako natin, we're making a new foundation. Ito ay isang civic education foundation. Our hope here is to rear leaders all across the country. Our hope is to actually create more participatory democracy. Our hope here is, guys, magkaroon tayo ng mas mataas na antas ng political literacy. Para hindi lang tayo yung usual mga moralistic discourse lang. Of course, morality matters. We want yes, ideally we want angels to run government, but we are stuck here with human beings, and human beings are not infallible, including, of course, the institutions of our democracy, which we'll discuss very shortly. So, ang gusto namin nangyari dito sa civic education is actually to lay down the foundation, God willing, inshallah, for something that is much closer to, sabihin natin, future forward, move forward party sa Thailand, something closer to maybe not as lefty, but something like what the Mamdanis and the OCs and Bernie Sanders and social democrats around the world have been pushing for, but also something that is much more tugma, no? Tugma dito sa ating kasaysayan, sa ating kultura. So, may elemento ng liberalismo, may elemento ng social democratic progressive elements. And then, of course, may mga, of course, some would say we're also conservative on certain issues depending on how you want to look at it. So, eto na, meron na tayong effort, guys, to move in that direction. Kaya, I invited some of our good friends, literally yung friends natin among others, to follow yung Team Pinas, which is effectively, ito po yung ating main page for our new foundation na ginagawa natin with the group of leading patriots, public thinkers, experts. We have lawyers, civic education experts, people who work in analytics, in work in data science, in political science, and we hope to actually expand this group over the coming years or so. And in a way, sino ba naman tayo? But at least we want to contribute to a much upgraded level of discussion as we focus on ito na, ultimate Project 2028, because sa ating palagay 2028 ito yung maging makasaysayan na araw at makasaysayan na taon, makasaysayan na araw, of course, yung election mismo, pero makasaysayan na taon ang 2028, because I am still very, very confident, regardless of what happens on the impeachment issue, on the Supreme Court issue, regardless of all the shenanigans and clown show we might see or we expect to see in the Senate and other institutions soon. I still see a lot of good momentum for good people and for good and effective governance in the coming years or so. So, kumbaga, ito yung vehicle natin to contribute to that effort, no? So, I'm very confident about the team. Also, speaking of which, of course, maraming salamat, guys. Super thank you, super thank you sa lahat ng mga ating mga kaibigan galing sa iba't ibang sektor who have expressed solidarity and support, of course, for Kapersi, Sandania, and of course, also yours truly, in light of itong latest, sino naman itong mga Gallery of Rogues, isang banda part list, yung dalawa na dodgy na, no? Anyway, itong kabal na naman na gusto mag-harass sa atin, legal harassment and other. So thank you so much sa, countless lawyers and civil or society organizations and activists reaching out to us and offering support. Don't worry, we have already set up everything, all the infrastructure necessary, but God willing, and then this is our fervent hope and wish that hindi papatulan ng ating beloved, of course, and our highest court of the country, itong mga frivolous petitions na to. In fact, this lawyers and all who are weaponizing frivolous petitions should also actually be held to account, because this is clearly an attempt at silencing and intimidating people. Thankfully, in our case, we have a battalion of people ready to help us. But what about the ordinary folks, right? So, kaya mahalaga talaga, guys, na we stand our ground and we fight back. And thank you so much again for everyone who's expressed solidarity with us in the past week or so. Whether it is si Attorney Chel Jokno, clearly someone who is a legal luminary, whether it is, of course, Manay Leila, another bar top notcher, another, of course, not only a fine legal mind, but also really, really someone who's proven the mettle of her leadership and love for our country. So thank you so much sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat also for dun sa, yes, I know sometimes we have our disagreements. I'm quite open about my criticism of, the legal, liberal party or whatever throughout the years and all. But thank you so much again, of course, dun sa Liberal Party of the Philippines for expressing solidarity. Of course, not only with me, but also with Kapersi Sandanya. Hindi ko alam kung may mga nag-express ng solidarity kay Larry Gadon, which is a separate case, by the way. Hindi kami kasama. Another dodgy, shady person na mukhang zero success rate behind that, whatever. But nevertheless, thank you so much also for the expression of support. Thank you so much, of course, Liberal Party President Attorney Erin Tanyada, or acting president, for his statement about how Kapersi. By the way, congratulations to Kapersi also for now being the deputy minority leader in the House of Representatives, and of course yours truly as. Thank you for seeing us as voices of those who continue to ask difficult but necessary questions, and that your party supports us because democracy depends on people who are willing to speak even when the cost is high. Maraming salamat din sa Tindig Pilipinas at Centro. Of course, ito naman mga progressive groups, right? So we have liberal groups, liberal officials, we have progressive groups, we have folks from the Akbayan Party, among others, expressing support for us. Many of you have reached out to us in private to express your support and love. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Don't worry, hindi natin hayaan na magpapaano lang tayo sa mga, alam mo na, diba? Baka may sasabihin na naman tayo, hiyak na naman sila. Anyway, thank you so much for that. Maraming salamat. Ako naman, my stance is very clear. I've been on the record that yes, I mentioned facts, but I put facts into context. Yes, I have 20 different platforms and I say things, but I always put caveats and context. But bago natin pag-usapan, guys, Sara Duterte, Project 2028, my take on the Senate and how things are moving in that direction, let me just quickly also go to this issue because I think mahalaga din yan. You see, my primary training is as a political scientist, right? So, as social scientists, guys, actually, right? We look at empirical evidence. We look at data, right? We look at, how different institutions and different individuals and political figures interact. Now, this is one of the reasons why we found extremely frivolous itong petition ng mga fill in the blank ng mga gallery of rogues na yan, is because I'm not sure kung nag-aral tong mga to sa well, I'm sure nag-aral sila, but I'm not sure if these people are familiar actually in political science, in high quality social science. There is already a very robust literature on what is called the loyalty effect. In fact, we referenced this in an earlier episode. I think this was the episode with Senator Trillanes, among others. There are actually some studies not looking only at power of appointment and the so-called loyalty effects in general, because if, for instance, you're based in the United States, they clearly say Trump appointee or conservative dominated Supreme Court. Those things are like standard forms of conversation in the United States. So hindi ko alam saan itong mga henyong DDS na to, in what universe, obviously hindi yata mukha silang familiar, to talk about so-called loyalty effect is not an incitement or is not an insult. All right, this is standard political science discourse. Now, if anyone wants to question my political science involvement, go ahead and look at our, ayan na naman tayo, our four-digit Google Scholar citation, meaning citation by other academic works. So we do political science. I am a regular contributor to Journal of Democracy, which is considered by many as the leading academic journal on anything that has to do with democratization. No less than Larry Diamond, Francis Fukuyama, and others are regular contributors also there. You can check out my latest piece, Dynastic Democracy, Philippines Dynastic Democracy is there. Now, just to give you an idea, in political science, social science, this is a normal discourse. So, in fact, if you look at the latest issue, 2024, no, May 2024 issue of Journal of Law and Social Inquiry. This is published by the Cambridge University Press. Dito, pinag-aralan talaga nila, in particular, guys, no? So ito yung title ng article, Justices and Political Loyalties, an empirical investigation of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, 1987 to 2022. So kung titignan nyo, guys, this is just the abstract part. The Philippine Supreme Court is considered one of Asia's most activist courts during the regime of President Rodrigo Duterte 2016 to 2022. However, concerns grew about its independence. Again, dun sa mga natin na binabasa ko lang itong article na to. This article, journal article just published last May, investigates determinants of the court's behavior since the country's return to democracy in 1987. Now, one of the arguments it raises is with respect to what political scientists call the loyalty effect, right? The likelihood, therefore, that justices will vote for the government more often when the president who appointed them is incumbent or in office. It's a term in political science, loyalty effect. There's nothing contemptuous, there's nothing illegal, there's nothing, what I'm saying, incitement effect about it, right? This is standard political science discourse. Now, as a political scientist who happens to have hundreds of thousands, more than a million followers on different platforms, it is within my right to to share my knowledge as a political scientist in a way that is appealing to people, and with the caveats and links and all. Speaking of which, so we find that early years on the bench are closely associated with the vote for the appointee administration, and the end of a presidential term is weakly associated with a vote. Okay. In fact, if you look at it, I also said in my caveat, for instance, na it would be unfair to automatically also make presumptions, because that's also what the study shows, that yung so-called loyalty effect is just stronger in the earlier years, not in the later years. Well, in my case, my argument is that we're talking about the daughter of a former president who happens to be vice president. So that correlation will be even weaker just based on the political science discourse. But to talk about the loyalty effect itself, guys, is not a form of contempt. It's an exercise in political science research. Now, going back also to this, guys. Oh, ito yung mga DDS, umiyak na naman dito sa comment section, panibasa, yung mga nyo, wala man lang publication, anything like that. Anyway, under the Duterte administration, according to this study, voting preferences have been more aligned with the appointee, and factional alliances of justices appointed by different presidential administration mirror political alignments. These results have practical implications for the fragile constitutional democracy in the Philippines and contribute to understanding of loyalty dynamics in less institutionalized judicial settings. This is published by, again, Journal of Social Law and Social Inquiry. This is last year pala lumabas to, May 2024, lumabas ito. And this is by Professor Bjorn Dressel. I think he's still at the Australian National University, if I'm not mistaken. Is he also leading the Philippine Institute there? Tomeo Inoue and Christina Regina Bonoan, right? So these are the scholars behind this, quite a recent authoritative study on this regard. So, basically, ang sinasabi ko dito, guys, is as political scientists, as social scientists, normal lang na pag-usapan mga ganitong bagay, yung so-called loyalty effect, power of appointee, and then looking at correlations. In fact, it was precisely in that context that I said it would be also quite a stretch, to say that just because this, therefore automatically that. Although to talk about potential correlation or so-called loyalty effect in itself, it's not only an exercise of freedom of expression, it's an exercise in my behalf of academic freedom, right? So yun po yung argument natin in this case. And in fact, repeatedly, guys, we clarified, including under some of the tweets on some of the social media posts that some of our friends, clearly they're not people known for paying attention to nuance or anything like that. But, I'll just be nice. We'll put it very politely, very politely. So I'm trying to just draw out itong relevant articles. Ang problema kasi ang dami ko na post eh. Kulit-kulit ko rin kasi. I'll just put it there right away there para klarong-klaro para sa atin lahat. Ayun na tong internet natin dito. But anyway, as I clarified, and this was actually the subject of my column in Philippine Daily Inquirer the other week. Again, can mention the fact, you can even raise legitimate questions about the so-called, what political scientists call loyalty effect. But then again, also we had the caveat that that does not necessarily say X, Y, and Z. Now, I don't know in what genius mind is that necessarily against the law or anything like that. Kaya nga, we're very hopeful and very optimistic and cautiously, very optimistic, God willing, that this kind of frivolous petitions hindi bibigyan ng attention dahil it doesn't really deserve it, and our great justices and Supreme Court is way beyond that. Not to mention on multiple occasions, we were absolutely clear. No, ako personally, I'm not neutral because I still disagreed with the decision. I'm not neutral in sense that, oh, I can be convinced either way. No, I do not agree with the decision, and it's not just based on my understanding as an ordinary citizen, but this is also based on my conversation with all sorts of independent legal luminaries and thinkers. And I'm still waiting for an ex-chief justice or an ex-justice or a top legal luminary or top law school to actually stand by this decision. So for what I'm saying is the opposite. And even the integrated bar of the Philippines statement was, I'm not very sure it was a clear endorsement of one side or the other. If anything, in fact, it emphasized the constitutional mandate ng House of Representatives when it comes to matters of impeachment. So actually, you can read it also in a direction that reinforces some of the critics that we're hearing of the Supreme Court decision. So yeah, while I stand by my position that based on my own conversation with legal luminaries, based on my own understanding of ruling, based on my own understanding what's going on, yes, I have the disagreement. We also put the caveats, and that was a clear exercise of my academic freedom and also personal freedom. And in the meantime, thank you so much sa mga kadidias dyan for trying to, for actually, helping us to actually gather even more support and mobilize support and all of that. And thank you so much also sa lahat ng mga followers natin, among others who have been so kind to show your love and your prayers and really making us feel that you value what we bring to the table. Again, so I'm just just trying ang bagal kasi mag-load itong kainis hindi lumabas. I just wanted to bring out this particular tweet and all. This is very important among others. Hindi ko kasi pala na-transfer dito. My goodness. 2 oras ko siniset up ko. Maling wiring system pala yung nilalagay natin. But hindi pa naman tayo Tito level. But when it comes to technical issues and all, sometimes, at least yung mga first time, di ba? When you're trying to set up something, it takes some time. So, yung pala, in the meantime, I was not able to transfer itong tweet na ito. Wait lang, okay. Oops. Yep, okay. Alright, balik tayo sa mundo. Ayan, okay. Ayan. Para sa bayan. Oh, by the way, guys, I know nasasabihin naman tayo, ito na naman si Richard, nagpo-post siya ng kung ano. But remember, we always say here na, please don't try to create any kind of, tensions between us or another. I'm not competing with anyone else in the country. Our competition is really international as much as possible, and we'll discuss that very shortly. Thanks to your support and thanks to your supporters all around the world. Actually, indeed, it looks like we're among the leading podcasts on anything about ASEAN, Southeast Asia, geopolitics, and politics sa buong Southeast Asia. I mean, not just in this country, but in buong Southeast Asia. So, I'm no longer gonna, just say, we're the leading political in this country, whatever, because I'm sure may mga hindi matuwa dyan. But, I think we legitimately can say right now that we're one of the leading in the region, in Southeast Asian region. And I think that will keep it much more... And naman tayo, sabi naman, ito na naman si Richard, pasaway talaga. Hindi, mabait ako, guys. I'm a very kind person. I'm very amazing person. No, but the other thing that I really found also ridiculous about the situation is that, like, my goodness, I mean, people who are suddenly now, pag nasabi na, ito si, kunyari, si Bato, okay, ayan, ito mga henyo natin, pag-usapan din na, ito mga kadidias natin, diba, na talagang very law-abiding, ang taas ng respeto sa, diba, taas ng respeto sa, ano, sa ligang batas, diba? Um, if you want to talk about respect for the courts, right? You want to talk about respect for the Constitution. If you want to talk about respect for judicial institutions, including the Supreme Court, among others, remember, guys, how many times did Rodrigo Duterte try to intimidate the Supreme Court, threaten the Supreme Court, defy the Supreme Court, right? Very, very clear, guys, how many times that happened. In fact, even on the website of International Court of Justice, there's a criticism of Rodrigo Duterte. And then remember the whole Coaranto drama and whatnot. I mean, my goodness, guys. I mean, this DDS people have zero moral ascendancy, zero credibility whatsoever. To even talk about issues of respect for the judicial institutions and all, and that's why this is really a crazy situation. I mean, like, so I don't know if my short-term memory problem or talagang may denialism or talagang medyo malayo sa katotohanan ng kanilang pag-intindi ng realidad, or talagang may problema sa or talagang magaling siguro mag-mental acrobatics yung mga kaibigan natin dyan. Whatever it is, I just find it like ridiculously ironic, no, and paradoxical na yung mga tao na nagsusuporta sa mga tao na openly were inciting for extrajudicial killings, openly defying the Supreme Court, openly insulting our constitution, openly saying hindi ka na. I mean, guys, you don't need to ask me, just kahit mga grok, kahit mga chat GPT, ilagay nyo lang, how respectful have the DDS been to the rule of law in this country? How respectful have the DDS been, right, to the Supreme Court throughout years, especially when Duterte was in power, right? How respectful is so, kaya nga, when etong si Bato biglang sasabihin niya, hindi ako abogado, ay, si Batorni, hindi na bigla attorney, no? Biglang sabi niya, ako ay hindi attorney, pero biglang marunong ako rumespeto at sumunod sa Korte Suprema. Biglang ganyan na siya, no? Biglang ganyan na. And these are the very people, who are, first of all, trying to pretend as if they were legal luminaries, pushing for mumbo-jumbo, remanding, whatever, unprecedented acrobatics. These are the very people who clearly not only defied the law, but if we were to believe the evidence that is being provided by the witnesses, by the victims of extrajudicial killings, we're talking about someone who actually has engaged in mass atrocities. So much so that, ito na lang masasabihin ko kay Bato, di ba? Respect also ICC, especially when they're gonna come after you with the warrant of arrest, right? There's a reason why si Digong ay nandyan na. At kung matapang ka naman at mahal na mahal mo si Tatay Digong, baka naman gusto mong samahan, di ba? So, yun na. Biglang napaka-invested nila in respect for judicial institution. I mean, look at just Sara Duterte. Let's be honest. How did really Sara Duterte end up in our public consciousness at the national level? Hindi naman natin sila kilala for a long time. Bigla sila nung yan, sinapak-sapak, di ba? Someone who was officer of the court. Someone who was representing at least a judicial institution, not the Supreme Court, but at least. And then, anong stance nila doon? Hindi ba yan ang insult sa judicial institution? And what is a bigger insult than physically assaulting someone, right? Carrying an order by relevant judicial institutions, right? And when we talk about judicial institution, guys, this is different. It's not only the Supreme Court, it's not only Court of Appeals, it's not only the Regional Trial Court. You're also talking about other agencies, including executive agencies like DOJ, NBA, etc. All of them who, in one way or another, are in charge of dispensing with justice, right? So, napaka-hipokrito tong mga taong to na openly calling for EJK or abetting EJK or openly just trying to justify rational EJK. People who are worshipping, right? Almost like a cult. Hindi lang yung isang na proclaim na pero pati itong isang tao na nananapak, right? Nananapak ng tao na nagrepresent ng judicial institutions natin. So this is precisely why, guys, ang sinasabi natin, we shouldn't even give these people any room to try to have any momentum to take things on the offensive, because they have zero credibility whatsoever. It's the same reason why they have zero credibility to talk about anything, guys. Anything that has to do with matters of corruption. Gusto natin pag-usapan corruption, pag-usapan natin. Oh, kamusta yung Farmali investigations? Right? You want to talk about that? Let's go ahead. You want to talk about mga anomalya sa budget? Let's go ahead. Let's talk about kamusta yung budget and its dispensation when Digong was in power, especially during pandemic. You want to talk about questionable appointments in DOH? Kaya kanina lang, sinabi ko nung tama naman yung sinabi ni JV Ercid, Senator Ercid, na bakit abogadong pinalit dun sa isang DOH Undersecretary. So I had to remind him, oh, by the way, ano pala, wag natin kalimutan about the precedence of Digong appointing a former police chief as a DOH Undersecretary. Now, none of this means that we should turn a blind eye dun sa mga kapalpakan or mga kababalagan na nangyayari ngayon. But it also means that let's not forget what was happening not long ago before we jump and just focus on what's happening latest, right? So kaya nga, very important, guys. We are talking about people of zero credibility, and then these are people are trying to question us about our consistency and conviction. Excuse me, sinong nag-unit team? Sinong nagpabalik, right? Sa mga Marcoses sa poder. At ito pa, hindi pa natuto sa buhay. Kaaway na yung isang kapatid, aliado naman yung isang kapatid. Di pag-usapan din natin yan. Oh, by the way, speaking of which, diba, these are the caveats that I put very clearly. So if you look at it, these are the tweets I made also. I said, nevertheless, right? Even though it's true that Digong, for instance, appointed the majority, nevertheless, the caveat was absolutely clear. But yun nga dahil talagang malisyoso, etong mga DDS na ito, tsaka, baka talagang kulang sa Oo, mga basit nga. We are very clear about our caveats. Sabi ko, nevertheless, the decision was unanimous and would be unfair to automatically cast judgment or aspersions based on appointment patterns. And then I also said, check the Supreme Court site. And by the way, I officially reached out to the Supreme Court, and including a Supreme Court justice, you can guess whom, for an interview. But of course, under the current circumstances, maybe we'll have it later on na lang. And also dun sa isang article natin, before itong mga gallery of rogues ay nagmamaganda, I was also very clear that, and while it's true that the majority of first Supreme Court justices were appointed by the former president, it's also unfair to make any automatic inferences about their decision making. So yeah, I disagree with the decision, but at the same time, I put things into context, and we can talk about things in correlational terms, because that's what social scientists do, and that's why pinag-usapan natin na mabuti kanina yung relevant study na yan. But then again, going back to this, hindi ito double standard Hypocrisy yan Digong openly insulting the Chief Justice of the country, openly threatening the Supreme Court during his time. Sara Duterte, sinapak-sapak kung sino-sino. Minsan may mga nasabi-sabi pa siya na, may imply pa siya na something na almost libelous, base dun sa isang report. Laban. Tapos ngayon, biglang maging defenders kayo na, which makes me wonder, bakit napaka-invested itong mga ka-DDS natin na iba dito sa decision na yan? Takot ba sila? Bakit parang tuwan-tuwa sila na baka hindi magkaroon ng trial? Or most likely hindi magkaroon ng trial this year? Bakit kaya? Bakit sobrang invested sila? Kung talagang inosente naman si Sara Duterte, right? If Sara Duterte is really innocent, kung talaga gawa-gawa lang yung mga then you shouldn't be scared. In fact, di ba? Meron na nga tayo DDS 7 or DDS 9, some would say, diba? Ang dami yung supporters. So, ma-quit din naman kayo. So, bakit kayo takot na takot? Sa trial, bakit sobrang invested kayo? Bakit binubuli nyo kahit sino? As if naman it works. But tinitry ni silence kahit anyone who's trying to say, wait lang. No, we still have to have the trial. In fact, and this brings me to the next point of our discussion, guys. And the next point of discussion is, kamusta naman sa Senado? Diba? Let's talk about the Senate. Now, obviously, as far as the House of Representatives is concerned, they're sending multiple signals, different signals. Sa isang banda, of course, they're saying they respect the mandate of the Supreme Court as the ultimate interpreter ng ating saligang batas. At the same time, they're expressing their disagreement. At the same time, you also have people like former Senator Leila De Lima, Congressman De Lima, I think she's also Deputy Minority Leader, who is also saying that if ang basa nila dito is the decision actually in one way or another goes against the Constitution, and the relevant provisions of the Constitution when it comes to questions of accountability and impeachment, they may also push for impeachment against those who may have violated the Constitution. Because remember, the highest document is still the Constitution, right? Yun ang pinag-usapan natin dito. And we have separation powers and equality of the branches of the state here. Now, hintayin pa natin hanggang August 6 anong mangyari dito, guys, when it comes to where the Senate is going. But let me talk about it at least in this way. Ako po ay very encouraged, I would say. Again, I still stand. Yes, I disagree with that decision. Nevertheless, caveat X and Y. Also, I still stand by my disagreement dun sa decision ng mga progressive senators not to join Rizal Tiveros in the minority. Having said that, I'm fair. And that's what I'm saying. I can consistently back it up because there's always a caveat and context. I also give very much credit to Bam, to Kiko, right? Who actually joined once again, right? So they already joined the minority on the question of creating transparency dun sa BICAM, which by the way, I winelcome ni Martin Romualdez. Hindi ko alam kay Boy Kilay, anong tataasan naman siguro ng kilay niya. Kasi yung issue ng insertions, malaki yan eh. So yes, we're against questionable practices and that's why we need transparency pagdating sa ating bicameral discussions para alam natin walang mga kakaibang kakataas kilay na mga insertions na mangyari. But at the same time, we have to give credit where credit is due. In fairness to both Kiko and Bam, they joined the minority. Tito Soto in particular, and the rest, and Rizal Ontiveros, to push for transparency in the bicameral committee, which mirrored also the voting pattern of De Lima, of Chel Jokno, Akbayan. But also, si Bam and Kiko joined passing this resolution that actually says, since na-acquire niya na ang Senado ang jurisdiction over the impeachment trial, since na-transmit na ito sa Senado, and since constitutionally speaking, the Senate has the sole mandate to convene the trial, to conduct the trial of impeachment trial, then therefore, pwede pa sila mag-move forward, especially as we speak, meron ng motion for reconsideration. So executory but not final because meron tayong motion for reconsideration. But this is where politics comes in. But having said that, guys, in fairness naman kay Kiko and Bam, again, I still stand by my criticism na sana hindi sila sumali sa majority. It looks like Cheese really didn't need them because he had super majority anyway. It looks like the DDS block is super powerful within it. I mean, how many committee hearings does tatlo yung kay Aimee, tatlo yung kay Robin Hood Padilla, ilang ba sa mga Cayetanos? 5, 6, nag-giveaway na lang daw niya yung isa. Thank you ha. I mean, after all, ano ba ang expertise nung isa sa science and technology? Bigyan mo na lang kay Bam, at least may alam sa education, matalino tong taong to, at summa cum laude and class valedictorian. But having said all of those things, guys, I mean, come on. It's going to be tough. It's really, really going to be tough because they're going to be minority with the majority, and let's see how far this go. What's optimistic for me is, baka naman, if they keep on pushing this, and they'll be, and the DDS 7 or 9, some would even say, keep on pushing their luck, baka mag-fracture din to, at mawala na si Kilay. Mawala na si yung Senate President. Andun pa rin Kilay kasi nakatato di ba? Pero baka mapalitan rin kasi we also know that the situation is quite fragile. That actually, just days before the SONA, if only BBM had more risk appetite and was open to some sort of drama, I'm sure he didn't want so much drama kasi siguro gusto niya medyo good vibes lahat and all of that. Kaya nga in-avoid niya discussing anything really contentious, although he did it quite competently in certain ways. Actually, Cheese was not sure, Senate President. In fact, I was looking at Cheese's face dun sa batasan. It's like he seemed very happy and like parang, whoof, parang sense of relief. And you could see Tito Soto still. I'm not a fan of Tito Soto, by the way, but I'm just saying, at this last time I checked, Tito Soto didn't like forthwith the situation right and left. And it's not even about Tito Soto. It's about whether are you with Cheese or not. Has Cheese done enough for him to stay in that position or not? It's as simple as that. It's just as simple as that, right? Anyway, so the optimist in me says, right? The optimist in me says na baka naman if hayaan ni Cheese na yung mga DDS they'll force their point too much, baka this thing will just completely collapse, and then that gives an opening for the other blocks to come together, including the three pinks, the five macho block, and then the five or six independents, including Sherwin Gatchalian, sige na nga, Zubiri, JV Erecito, of course, and Loren Legarda. And then Aimee Marcos is Aimee Marcos. Aimee is for Aimee, right? So, speaking of that, let's go to the last part of our discussion today before we close this off for the week. Again, this is just our experimental, guys. Sorry, but medyo hassle pala mag-set up ng technical. But anyway, going back to this, guys. Bakit nandun pa rin sa sa first? Baka naghang lang dun sa screen. Okay ba tayo dyan sa Facebook? Are you seeing me? Are you seeing me and my kilay? Tingnan mo, baka mamaya. Ito na kasing penultimate part na I think is very important. Alright, this is very important. Oh, by the way, okay. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Obviously, you can always talk about charot-charot na you can always talk about huh. Wait lang, ha. Baka na-retain na siya. Ito, magde-debate kami. Wait lang, ha. Nakikidebate na kami. Wait lang, sige, balikan kita mamaya. Sige, wait. Anyway, part of unity. Anyway, going back to this, guys. The thing we want to talk about here is, eto na. By the way, thank you so much again sa lahat ng mga supporter niya. Like, anyone can come up with like a mambo dyan. Yung SM na nga, may awarding silang sarili. Whatever. But my point is that you can look at large language model and increasingly intelligent, less delusional, crazy AI meta-analysis. And basically what our hunch is correct, that we're actually not really competing just nationally for the top political podcast. We are thankfully considered as one of the leading podcasts in Southeast Asian region, and of course, as I said, our ambition really is even bigger than that. We want to be really a global podcast, and that's why your support is very, very important. So you're more than free to check it out. So if you look at the top political podcasts in ASEAN or about ASEAN and Southeast Asian issue, Deep Dive is already considered there. If you look at the top 5 podcasts that have something to do with Southeast Asian affairs, clearly you can see that I think the View from Manila podcast TV show natin is number 3, right? Nakikita natin sa mga rankings of that. Again, this is not to say that we're just so amazing and wonderful. This is just to affirm to you guys that our ambition always was to be one of the leading in Asia and beyond. That's really, really always our thing, di ba? So, and by the way, let me also shout out, of course, dun sa mga ibang kaibigan natin, si Greg Pauling from CSIS, who's also a very good analyst, great analyst of Southeast Asia, to Dina Jalal, of course, Dr. Jalal, our very, very good friend from Indonesia. His podcast really focuses on Southeast Asia. We're at number 3, base sa list na yan. And number 4 is also Straight Talk Southeast Asia by Bridget Welsh, and also Asia Geopolitics by the Diplomat magazine, which we also contribute to. So again, as I always said, I'm not here to compete with local whatever. We're trying to be as international as possible. Anyway, speaking of that, nevertheless, let's talk about the way forward. And the way forward, guys, here is 2028. Now, speaking of Aimee is for Aimee, ganito, guys, you already had a hunch of the the numbers that some of us are seeing off the record. We kind of touched that in our last episode kahapon dun sa FY series natin. You can just check it out. So it looks like, if you want to do a proper survey about who's competitive or not, because one of the things na sobrang nakakainis, guys, whenever I discuss, ito dapat 2020, it's like, hindi naman mananalo yan eh. Like, okay, anong basihan mo? Meron ka bang survey na gawa? Meron ka bang focus group discussion? Ikaw ba ay nag-regression analysis? Ikaw ba ay may sarili ka palang ChatGPT na hindi natin alam? Meron ka bang, okay, sige, let's go Foundation Series Asimov. Meron ka bang Prime Radiant na ano ba yung tik-tik-tik, ganyan, tapos ganyan mo, yung pina-prime radiant mo, tapos na-analyze mo. Like, what is your basis for that? Right? What is your basis for it to say Riza is not competitive at all or ito lang mananalo? So actually, based on the numbers we're seeing in commission surveys, and we kind of gave a hunch about it, right? Actually, Riza is competitive, but more as a VP. But interestingly, she's going to be very competitive as a VP with someone like Rafi Tulfo. Again, I know, magagalit na naman kayo sa nila, but actually, in a way, they complement each other, right? Kasi Rafi, macho, this and that, but actually also strong on labor issues. If you don't believe me, look, you can check it out. I'm not fan of the whole Tulfo whatever, but in fairness to Rafi Tulfo, in particular ways, if you can ask Vico Soto, you can ask Riza Ontiveros, they have cooperated on many progressive issues together. So it's very important, guys. It's very important to take a look at it. So if you look at these numbers, if you look at these numbers, guys, it's very clear. It's very clear that certain combinations will make a lot of sense, right? And apparently, a Riza Tulfo combination apparently makes it very competitive against. Again, this is another interesting thing that the data is showing, right? That apparently an all strong women Sara Aimee combination could also make sense. Yun naman, I can see it why, because yung isa solid north, solid south, joining of the houses, basically Uniteam 2.0. Apparently that works. I want to see more numbers on Bam and Bam and Lenny, or Lenny and Risa, right? Lenny also is very competitive, right? Very competitive. But it looks like mas malaking chance manalo si Lenny as presidential in a multi-person race rather than one-on-one race. Contrary to a certain survey that we saw. Hindi ko na pangalanan, medyo dodgy survey. And by the way, siguro natamaan ito. Ito si Allen Beltran. Medyo epal tong talaga tong tao na to. Nagfe-feeling parati na alam niya yung issue niya. No, I never pretended to be a pioneer in podcasting, except we already have 1,200 episodes, which is, I think, is more than any of other podcasts out there who are we're competing against. So it's not about question of pioneer, it's about the question of quality, quantity, and audacity, and of course pushing the envelope. And we had no less than people from Elbish Colbury to Ambassador Romualdez to all sorts of top different people, including foreign secretaries, etc. on this show. All right? Okay, makinig ka para medyo upgrade naman yung ano mo. May mga epal dyan na napapansin natin, we have to call out once in a while. But anyway, ito yung mga nakikita natin na interestingly, apparently Lenny does it stronger against Sara in the like 3-4-way race. Tulfo and Riza actually do well together, and Sara does better with Aimee apparently than Sara with Robin Hood. And then there's another angle we're looking at, potentially Bongo also coming into this race, but maybe with Isco, we don't know. It could be a completely different side of the DDS equation. And then if you also look at the Pulse Asia survey last year, Grace Po is actually the leading candidate to be a VP. She was always kind of in the mix. The Po name is very strong, especially among the masses. You could see easily, how well the party is attached to the Fernando Po Jr. did well in the latest elections. So what am I saying here? What I'm saying here is that I'm not endorsing any particular. All right, I'm not endorsing any particular. Was that a compliment? Sorry, man. Anyway, makinig ka. Don't let me, Makinig kayo. Hindi mo kulit. All I'm saying here is that it's very fluid. So sobrang syunga yung mga nagsabi na sure win na, even if hindi ma-impeach si Sara, pwede mo pa rin siyang sabihin na, di ka naman na-acquit ano ka lang di ba? Like, or even if it's not like she was acquitted by she was not acquitted by and this is where, actually, we have to be fair to the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court did not acquit her of yung mga charges. Ang sinabi lang ng Supreme Court is, ito yung mga issues na nakita namin dun sa, for them, violations of the procedures, which of course the House of Representatives and a number of legal luminaries, ex-justices, including at least one ex-chief justice, do not agree with her. At least they're saying, masyado na rush tong decision na. But, hindi siya na-acquit. So she can still be that. And that's why it's important when we look at the latest survey. Now, I have seen multiple versions. 2 of them are going to come out or are out already. The Octa one is already out. SWS one is also out, if I'm not mistaken. There's a third one that is going to come out. But I know one which is based on consumer sentiment. Let me pull it out. I'm not going to say which company to, but very big company. They do their own consumer sentiment. They know their stuff. They know their consumers. They correctly, and if you remember yung mga episodes natin, they correctly predicted that up to a quarter of voters will decide on the last day, especially mga Gen Z and all. Kumbaga, surveys conducted 2 weeks or 1 week earlier actually would not capture, and that's exactly what happened. Boom. Kaya ang laking tiwala ko rin dun sa itong isang consumer sentiment-based one. Let me just pull it out. Of course, hindi ko sabihin galing saan. So dito, bumaba rin si Sara Duterte. Right? Oo, 5 points if I'm not mistaken. Right? So, hindi nagkakalayo yung mga numbers. So, ang net trust, grabe. Ang net trust rating ni Sara is just +1. Just +1. Sorry, +15. Sorry, plus 15. But nevertheless, she went down, right? But the difference with this one is that the other ones are also not doing well. Net trust ni Chizusuke, there is net 25, -25, -25, right? In this consumer sentiment one, BBM and Martin Ramos don't do very well, but neither are Cheese and really Sara also doing fantastic. Cheese is net -25 net. And in the case of Sara Duterte, she's nowhere close to the kind of net 70%, 80, 90% her dad used to have, or even the kind of net 25, 30 that Lenny used to have. At this. So I'm looking at both off the record consumer sentiment based ones, which were proven to me right in terms of their methodology and projections in the 2020 elections. Nakikita rin natin ngayon sa SWS at sa also in the Octa survey na bumaba rin si Sara. Now, none of this means na tapos ng laban, Sara talo na siya. No. What I'm saying is, impeachment or no impeachment, it's going to be an extremely, extremely competitive race. All right? And in that sense, I think it's good for our democracy. Because that means there's chance for yung mga Team Liwanag na mag-organize, mag-mobilize ng tao, right? In the right direction, right? And that there's no need to be fatalistic about this. And that tuloy ang laban, and that we're not going to be intimidated, and we're not going to allow anyone to intimidate us. We're not going to cower in face of mga kasyungan and mga ewan and mga galler rogues. And that we have to continue to do what we're doing and show more solidarity and strength together, precisely because, guys, ang laki ng chance to get things right. Lenny is very, very competitive for 2028. I'm yet to see numbers for Bam, but I won't be surprised Bam could be also in the mix. Riza, at the very least, is very competitive in a VP race, right? If ever, she doesn't, let's just, we don't know kasi what's gonna happen with the pink, are they gonna have a unified thing? Is it gonna be Lenny Riza? Or is Bam gonna run with Lenny? Like, we don't know about that. But Lenny, at least Riza we know is very competitive, at least for VP position, right? And while Rafi Tulfo is in the equation, some are also talking about the potential for Erwin Tulfo and Torre to be the admin bet. And I doubt if Erwin runs, Rafi will run. And the thing kasi with Erwin is, yes, he didn't top the race as many expected, but nevertheless, he still has the Tulfo brand that, well, apparently works. But he's the most popular guy, at least with Allianz aside. And unlike Rafi, even if he loses, he'll still have his seat. So he has more margin for error. He's much younger. He has more basically room for maneuver, right? And then General Torre, as I said, is really the dark horse here. Who knows if he keeps on really stealing the thunder from the DDS and all of that? Who knows? Maybe he will not be only in because among Senate quite competitive na siya eh. But why stop there when you can go for to be part of a bigger equation? So on that note, I hope guys you appreciated the mga conversations natin. Again, we're looking at 10,000 different angles of every issue, and we're looking at millions of data points before we come up with something. Obviously, it's not like we do it per se, but we look at the data crunching, we look at different sources, we talk to different people, right? So yun po yung ginagawa natin. And I hope we don't give up, because actually maganda yung chance in 2020 that we get it right. And as I said, we can have passionate disagreements, we can have very sometimes emotional responses, but at the end of the day, We're all in this together, and I hope whether it's with the Supreme Court, whether it's with the at least yung ibang tao dyan, or even within progressive movement, I hope we all learn to agree to disagree. And yung mga iba dyan na sobrang galit sa atin because I said, bakit ba and Kiko hindi sumali kay Rizal? Like, there are reasons for why we said that. That doesn't mean na makalaban na tayo. That doesn't mean we cancel out each other. It doesn't work that way. In the same way na, yes, hindi rin ako natuwa ng iba na parang ineche puwera yung contribution ni Rizal, ganyan. That was also not helpful. So let's just keep it at this level and say we can agree to disagree. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to give credit where credit's due. Alright? On that note, maraming salamat. Thank you very much. God bless and have a lovely weekend and talk to you soon. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And then thank you so much again for continuing to keeping us uh, among the greatest in the region, hindi lang in the country. But on a more serious note, thank you so much, guys, for your prayers and love and support. Tuloy-tuloy lang yan. And please continue to promote us so that more people can be part of this conversation. In many ways, also kasama dito sa maliit natin na kilusan for a better Philippines, for a more progressive Philippines. Maraming salamat. God bless. Have a lovely weekend and catch up with you soon. And don't worry, we're gonna upload more and more interesting episodes. Today we uploaded yung isang really more proper multicam episode with Secretary Ronald Llamas and then also yung isang conversation din natin with sila Dino De Leon and friends, and more is to come. Yung iba edit pa, effort kasi yan, production yan. Alright, so patience, love, and support. And of course, most important, prayers. God bless and have